we always had really small dreams. Our first release, I was like, I just want the streams to show up on Spotify, break 1,000. So with this album, I was like, I would love to have 30,000 monthly listeners. And of course, you start releasing the singles and there's the snowball effect. You have 12,000 monthly listeners. And then by the time the next single comes out, you have 16 and you have 20. And so by the time an album released, we were around that point. It was like this feeling of like, oh, geez, like I really think we need to think bigger about this.
I appreciate you doing this. My name's Adam, and
Hey,
this
Adam.
is about you and your journey in music. And we'll talk about the record coming out, and
Sweet.
I love some of the features on there. So,
That's awesome. I'm super stoked. Thank you for having me. And where are you located right now?
I am in Nashville.
Oh,
But
cool. Cool.
yeah, I'm originally from California. I saw that are you in Reading? Is that what I
I'm
read?
in Reading. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm from way south of you then. I'm from San Diego.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I love San Diego, love Encinitas.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I did. I saw you worked with the John or Tim, or
yeah, it
maybe
was
both of
John
the
and Tim.
Formans.
Yeah, both of them in Carlsbad.
Oh, cool.
Where their studio is. Yeah.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, we're big fans of Switchfoot. I've had them on this podcast before.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Drew actually went to the same high school as me. Not the
No
same
way.
time, not the same time, but yeah, my mom taught at the high school a little bit. He taught his younger brother. Yeah, so we have this weird tie with the Switchfoot family.
That's awesome. Yeah, Drew's a sweet guy. I never met him while he was in Switchfoot because I know he just recently this last year transitioned out of Switchfoot.
Yeah.
Um, and so I had connected with him when I was there recording with the Switchfoot guys. He was like, "Hey man, I heard your music recently. I saw you're in San Diego. What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm here recording with John and Tim. Like, you coming by?" Because at that point they hadn't announced he was in the band anymore.
Oh, okay.
He was like, "Oh man, I won't, but next time you're in town, like let's hang and stuff like that." And so,
Okay. See, I'm not even hip to this. I didn't know that he wasn't even in the band anymore. Now I feel like
oh
an
yeah, it was
idiot.
just no, no, it was just a this year thing. So
Okay.
you'll need to find a new tie with Switchfoot.
Oh yeah, I do definitely now. But yeah, I've had him on and what's the drummer? Chad? I can't remember his
Yeah,
name right now.
yeah,
Yeah, it's Chad. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've had him on too. But that's awesome. Yeah, John's awesome dude. I used to work for a radio station in San Diego, so we'd play them all the time. And my wife and I, my sons got a chance to hang with him for a bit when he was doing that 24-hour, like he was doing like
oh
24 shows
man,
in 24 hours, something
wild,
crazy like
yeah,
that. Yeah, so that was kind of
yeah.
cool to see him do that thing. So, and my younger
No,
son, he's 6 now, but his first concert ever was Switchfoot.
no way. My first concert ever was also Switchfoot at it was the O Gravity tour, and Copeland opened, which was
Okay.
such a cool lineup. And
Yeah.
yeah, me, my dad, and my older brother went to that. Have you heard Tim's son, Jet, just released his first song on Friday? And
No.
it's really good. It's really good. And you could hear like the influences in it. And
I gotta look at is Jet Foreman?
yeah, I think the song's under either Jet Foreman or Jet Berlin. Um,
Okay.
sorry, I'm just lighting a candle.
Oh, cool. Get the mood right.
Yeah, got to.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm just gonna type it in.
Yeah,
Oh
awesome.
yeah, okay. I found something about it.
Can We Be the Ocean is what it's called.
Sorry, I'm just gonna type it in now. Can we be the ocean?
Yes,
I think
got
I
it
just
right
found his
here. I
I
can
think I
send you
just found his Switch. I think I just found his Twitter
a
instead,
stick.
but I'll just type it in. Oh, found it. Killer. I'm gonna check it out after.
Yes, do it. I mean, it's awesome. It's so fun to. I mean, he's like total like surfer, like raised in San
Oh,
Diego. I
sure.
guess what
I
you
mean, all
guys
those
weren't
guys.
originally from here. Were they
I'm
originally from there, or were they somewhere Midwestern?
No, I mean, though, at least John went, and I believe Tim and those guys, they all grew up in San Diego. I know they went to San
Gotcha.
Diego High School. Yeah, they are all like, I think originally from Encinitas area.
So cool. So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Um,
man.
Rad. Well, I want to hear your journey, man. So, where were you born and raised? I did see that you drove to Reading or something fairly
Yeah,
recently. Okay, but prior to that, where were you born?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and
Oh,
so
cool.
yeah, so very Midwestern. But
My
I grew
family's up in Cleveland, so I know a little.
okay.
I've been to Cincinnati before, but not many
Cleveland
times.
absolutely destroyed the Bengals last night, and so
Oh
uh,
yeah, I know. I did
Uh,
watch that a little bit while I was trick or treating. A guy we were a guy in my neighborhood's a fan. So when we got to his house, he was passing out candy and he had like his phone. He was watching the game.
that's perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, no, so it was like, was born in Cincinnati and everything I did was in Cincinnati,
Mhm.
but we lived in Indiana. So do you know like
Oh,
so it was like it's called the tri-state. And so
yeah, yeah.
right, like literally 5 minutes away is the Ohio state line, and 10 minutes this way is the Kentucky state line. And
Mhm.
so, we would, I think one year on my taxes, like when I was like 16 or 17, I had a Ohio, Indiana, and a Kentucky,
Oh,
like
no way. Because you
1099
worked in all
or,
three, like a
yeah,
somewhere in each city or each state.
yeah, it was like a coffee shop I
Wow.
worked at, had like a few different locations. Um, and then like a church I was working at the time, you'd go and you'd play there and you'd get like $100. And
Right, right, of course.
you'd get your 1099 for each state. And so that was a
Wow.
nightmare on taxes that year.
Oh, I'm sure. Wait, so how close? Now I'm confused, or not confused. I'm curious because I'm so bad with like geography.
So
So
good.
like,
Me too.
because there's pieces of Indiana where it's like 10 minutes or 20 minutes from like Chicago too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
is it
so
kind of border Ohio, Chicago, Illinois? I'm trying to think of how that would work.
yeah, so like I think I'm bad at geography too. I never took a geography class. So I was
Okay.
homeschooled. My mom wasn't good at it, so I didn't
Oh,
do
there
it.
you go. That
Um,
works.
uh, we would go. I think Illinois' state line was like 4 hours away.
Okay.
So you would drive like from through Indiana, and then once you hit like Fort Wayne, Indiana, I think that's where it bordered Illinois.
Okay. So you from Cincinnati, how long would it take you to get to Indiana? Like a few minutes?
Yeah, I mean, so we were 25 minutes from downtown Cincinnati, but 5 minutes from the Ohio state line. And
Oh,
so
crazy. Okay.
yeah, and so like I don't know if you know about like I mean Cincinnati's so confusing. Like we're playing in Cincinnati, like it's the Cincinnati show in November, but it's in Kentucky because it's just right over the
Oh,
bridge. And the
okay.
Cincinnati airport is in Covington,
Kentucky?
Kentucky.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
wild.
It's so interesting. Because it's just like, oh, we're like my friends will come visit like whenever I go and they'll be like, oh, this is Cincinnati. No, this is actually Kentucky. Okay, we get to my parents' house. Okay, so is this Cincinnati? No, this is actually Indiana.
Weird. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I didn't know it got the because we drove up to Kentucky a couple weeks ago for my wife's birthday. She wanted to go see something up there. And yeah, from here to Kentucky, it's only like an hour, not even. I mean, you could
Yeah,
drive right up to the
like
border.
Louisville.
Yeah, I went to Louisville. I think that was like 3 hours though, or 2.5 hours, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's crazy. Just because from being from California, as you know, I mean, Reading, you from San Diego, you're like 10 hours.
Yeah, it's as far as it can get.
Right. And it's just
My
like
brother
one state.
exactly. My brother just moved to LA and he was living in Reading prior to that. And so my grandpa, will call and he lives in Kentucky and
Uh-huh.
he'll be like, you drive to see Jack sometimes? I'm like, well, I mean, it would be a whole day.
Right,
Um,
right.
but it's basically Ohio to Kansas City, you know.
Sure. Yeah, or
Um,
it's like the Lake, Lake Erie to like
yeah,
Nashville or further. It's
exactly.
like so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's a country of its own.
Right,
Um,
right. Oh, that's cool. So well, growing up in Cincinnati, when did you get into music? I think I saw that you learned guitar at a very early age. Is that what I read?
yeah. So like it's kind of a blur in the sense of I have like a core memory of my dad giving me a guitar lesson in our I kind of gauge everything from our old house to the house I say I grew up in.
Okay.
We were in one house from when I was born to when I was 5, and then we moved to Indiana, and that was until I moved to California. And so I have like a memory of my dad showing me guitar and kind of teaching me like I think it was an A chord
Okay.
um, in the basement of our old house. So I know it was before I was 5, but I
Wow.
feel like yeah. And so I feel like it was I was probably 8 or 9 when I really started like wanting to play.
Okay.
And that was when I started putting all the stickers on my guitar and it became half my personality. And
Sure.
and so I have a video of me playing at like a festival with there's like a festival we always went to with our family. there was like an open mic portion that you sign up for. And so me and my brothers and my dad, we all played. And
Oh,
that was
wow.
when yeah, it was when I was 9, and we coordinated a jump in the reintro of the song. So we're like 1, 2, 3, jump, boom, And, it was so fun. But I think that's when. And then like, I mean, there
Wait,
was
real quick, and I'm curious. So how many brothers do you have?
I have an older
Just
brother
the
and a
one.
younger brother.
Okay, and all of you play, or all of you
Yeah,
can play.
3 years apart each. So my older brother always drummed, and now he does hip hop and rap.
Okay.
And then my younger brother he does everything. He produces. My older brother produces and mixes as well. My younger brother's into pop, and he's just
Okay.
started releasing a lot of music as well. And he's crushing out in LA and stuff like that.
So all of you are musical. Your dad is musical, and then
Yeah.
you just kind of formed a little family band that would play at this open mic.
Yeah,
this
we did it.
festival.
We did it once, and it was
Okay.
really fun. We called ourselves Chipotle and the Chicken Strips, and
Oh, that's a solid name.
yeah, it was great, trademark. And we decided it 5 minutes before we went on because they were like, "You need a band name," and I was like, "We should call it Priceless." And
Oh,
they're
that's
like, "Well,
good
that
too.
wouldn't make sense because we're all prices, so it would be price full, which doesn't really make sense."
Yeah.
And so we did Chipotle and the Chicken Strips, and it stuck. And the video is still on YouTube somewhere.
Oh
But
man, I gotta look it up after this. That's funny.
yes, please do.
Do you go? What did you guys do? A cover?
We did a Hillsong song. So
Oh.
it was interesting. It was my dad was he was like a church music minister. Like, so it was
Oh,
a
cool.
worship,
Like a worship.
pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow, that's rad.
from when I was 7 until I was 17, so 10 years of my life. And so those are the songs we learned because those are the songs that they played. And
Right,
so
right.
I remember that one had a really cool electric guitar bend in it, and that was when I was getting into electric guitar. I'm like, I want to do that one. And
Okay.
so we did that song. It was really fun. Still such a great memory with it. And yeah, I mean, those were the songs I always learned when I was young. So my chording was never great until I started playing other types of music, because in that genre, it's not much of different chords.
Oh, it's not. Okay, see, I don't know. Yeah, so a
Yeah,
lot of it's similar
it's
progressions.
yeah, 4 to 5 chords.
Okay.
A minor chord when it starts to get emotional. And
Okay.
and from there, it's great. It was such a fun memory with my brothers and my dad.
That's awesome. And then did you play in the worship band?
I did, yeah. So I
Okay.
played the majority of my life. I think, even when I moved to California, I played a decent amount, and it was really fun. And I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, I've
And
talked to other artists that I mean, what a cool opportunity to be able to play in front of people like all the
yeah,
time, right? And in a
yeah,
band.
it's so funny because the chords are so simple, and the musicality is so simple. But what I realize is, like, a lot of my friends that are in bands that aren't, even Christian affiliated, um, or religious at all, like the ones that had the upbringing playing in like a praise team at church always have like the good tones and the
Uh-huh.
good like gear, because they were 11 having to build a
Mhm.
pedal board and making it sound good and stuff like that. And so all my guys in my band did have a similar upbringing and
Yeah, a
a
lot of, I mean, massive musicians that I talk to that aren't even, their band isn't necessarily a Christian band by any means.
yeah,
They grew up in the church, playing in the church. And then it's
yeah,
like, oh yeah, because it's like automatic fan base of people that you're playing in front of and
yeah,
multiple times a week, right? I mean, it's not like you're out playing to 3 people, or you're not even
oh
out of the
yeah,
garage yet. It's like you're playing to a lot of people all
yeah.
the time.
And they all think that you are Freddie Mercury, like, just
That's awesome.
enormous, because they're all 60 plus, and
For
they're
sure.
all like, "You're gonna be a big deal." But
That's awesome though.
it's so funny. And, I mean, like Marcus Mumford, I think, his parents were, like, big into, churches, and I think Kings of Leon even started as,
Oh yeah,
like
Kings Leon did.
a church band. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody, but I've had numerous conversations with people like, "Oh yeah, I started in a church band," or I started playing in the church.
Yeah.
Started playing drums in the church or whatever." And then it's
Yeah.
like they have these insane careers after the fact, but they're
I
like,
know.
"Yeah, I learned everything from that."
I think a big part of it is that there's not many opportunities when you're really young. you know, outside of that. And they need people every Sunday. And so like not many opportunities to go play music, just like you were saying. And so I
Right.
feel like a lot of people get their start in that even when they didn't grow up in it. They're like, well, I want to play music. And they'll
Right.
let me play music, and they have a kit and it has microphones on it and it's gonna be loud. So let's do it, you know?
Yeah, you get to play, and you get to play with people on a consistent basis.
Totally. Totally.
When did you start writing music yourself or writing your own songs?
See, I mean, it's a similar thing to guitar where my dad was always writing songs and he's a really, you know, proficient
Oh,
song.
wow. That's
Um,
cool. Does
yeah,
he have
and
like,
so
did he ever put out like a record or anything?
he did with the church that he was at in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Um, he did that, and he has all these other songs that he and my younger brother are gonna put together and release eventually.
That's cool.
That are great songs. He's a huge like Jason Isbell and you know, he's got some Springsteen vibes, Avett Brothers, stuff like that. Great storyteller when he writes. And so he's gonna do that. But I mean, I was always around him writing songs, and so naturally I would kind of always write songs. And my mom has a picture on her, or like on the chalkboard at their house, with a song I wrote called Little Boat Blue, and I feel like that was like 2003. And
Okay.
so which I would have been 5. And
Oh
so
man. God, I'm
so
so much older than you.
I know it's always I'm
That's funny.
I'm the youngest in my band by a couple of years, and so whenever I say 98 was the year I was born, people are like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah. I graduated high school when you were 5. That's funny.
That's so funny. Um, but it was here and there. Like my dad would always kind of be like, "Hey, if you write a song, we can record it together," because he had like this recorder, and so
Mhm.
I was incentivized by having my song on a CD, and so it would be here and there, but I feel like sorry, I have a cough today.
Go for it.
I feel like it wasn't until I was probably, geesh, um, probably 14 that I started writing a lot of songs.
Okay.
And then I never saw myself as much of a songwriter. Um, I mean, I would write songs here and there before I moved to California, but I feel like it was around when I was 19 that I really started writing.
And
And it was,
is that what took you to California? And did you have like, did you want to be like a touring musician or like an artist? Is that the idea?
you know, I think I've always really admired my dad. And so
hmm
I always thought if I could have the exact same life that my dad had, I'd be really happy. And
Sure.
so,
Oh, so like leading like a
yeah,
worship group at a church.
yeah. When I was 19 and moved to California, my plan was to be out here for a year and then go home and find a church to work at. And
Okay.
you know, life took me a different direction. But at that point, I, you know, started writing songs and we released it with the band when I think I was 20. Yeah, I was 20. And that was when I was like, oh, I actually really like writing songs and I want to write songs for a living and do a band for a living.
hmm
And around the same time as, you know, when I started, I went on like a short tour playing guitar for a indie rock act,
Okay.
and I was like, "Oh, like I definitely want to be in the general market, um, playing clubs versus playing at churches." Uh,
Okay. So the
and so that,
first band that you had that you said you released something, right? And you had like
yeah,
you like a band. Was that the EP I was reading about, the Reading EP, or is that something
yes,
different?
yeah. So it's the same band. It's Gable Price and Friends, but we've taken a staunch career turn, or
Okay.
you know, genre change, since
So the
around.
Reading EP, the Reading EP was the one that you would play different churches with, that you were touring like not touring, but were you playing different
We played
churches?
like I think we only played at like one church with that because no one really listened to it that
Okay.
could.
And were those how did you get the people in the band? Like was that obviously in Reading, were
Yeah,
they people that you met through the church
we all
or
met through a school that we were all
okay.
in, and we all played in the like the school's worship team, you know, like the
Okay. Sure,
chapel team.
sure.
So except for me, I didn't. They told me no, and I couldn't play on the worship teams. Uh,
Why?
I don't know. It's still to this day. I'm like, they didn't even give me an audition. I sent in a video and they sent the callbacks and I wasn't on it. So I was like, okay, you know, that's why I started
Wow.
writing music. Cause I was like,
Uh,
I need to make music. And
okay. You're
genuinely
like,
the greatest,
I don't care what they think. I'm gonna do it anyway.
yeah, it's genuinely the greatest thing like that happened to me musically was getting basically the one thing I wanted to do out in California taken away from me, and
Uh-huh.
being like, okay, I've got to get creative and make my own music. And it was great because I think every step along the way I realized sonically I wanted to make something different from that. And then thematically and the rooms I wanted to play, I was just like, I actually think we need to take a pretty significant
Like
path
turn.
change and
Okay.
go fairly alternative indie rock. And you know, life happened and COVID happened, and
So
um
you were touring with this other band after you'd put that EP out.
yeah,
Then you joined another band just as a touring artist or musician, touring musician.
yeah, I was, I was in school still, and a buddy of mine back in Cincinnati texted me, and he was like, "Hey, I'm playing drums for this band. We are looking for a guitarist for the summer. Will you send in a video of you playing one of our songs? It pays, and
Mm-hmm.
and I liked their music like beforehand, and so I sent it in, and they were like, "Yeah, you're on for like I think 4 shows or something like that." And so I was home for the summer, and then I played the 4 shows, and they're like, "Hey, we got 6 more." I'm like, "Sick." They're like, "Hey, we got 5 more," and so it just kind of turned into the entire summer as opposed
Oh,
to just a
cool.
few stops. And I realized that music is hard. And touring, especially, of just like,
Hmm.
we were vanning, and we would stay at hotels and stuff like that, but the van was, it was long drives, and it was kind of it was like a lot of festivals, and so our in-ears were like screaming with resonant
Oh,
frequency, stuff
oh
like
yeah.
I just realized, I was like, man, the type of music I'm making right now, which is, the writing EP at the time, I was like,
Hmm.
this isn't the thing I'm willing to work this hard on. Like,
Hmm.
because I just don't care about it a ton. I was like, I could do this if I moved home and worked at a church, and I could easily make this type of music, but I don't think I want to do that anymore.
Hmm.
And that was kind of the beginning of a nice journey of figuring out what I actually wanted and
Okay.
what guys wanted, and being like, oh, none of our favorite bands or the bands we listen to or the bands we want to play with are anywhere near this sound, this thematic content.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it was just a nice pivot.
And then you guys pivoted, and is that when you put out the first album, and that was like in 2020? So was that COVID time and all that?
Oh, it was crazy, actually. Yeah. So we recorded all in 2019, and then we built a release strategy. How we built a release strategy, no idea.
Because you're just
Um,
an independent band at this point.
Yeah, we're just hanging out. It's still 2019, and we're all just in school hanging out. I had a job that would get me up at like 4 a.m. every day, and so
Hmm.
I'd be doing that, like, so every second of the day was taken up. And so I have no idea how we did it, like, kind of create a strategy. I called a few friends who had bands. I was like, "Hey, what do we do?" And so we released I think we released 3 singles before COVID hit.
Oh wow.
I think we released 6 singles total.
Okay.
And so we released one in March, or not March. We released one in January, released one in February, released one in March. And once we released the March one, the whole world shuts down. We recorded a music video the day, or like, I think it was like 3 days before we all got the text on our phone that was like, Governor Newsom issues a mandatory stay at home for the next 2 weeks.
Hmm.
You know, 2 weeks, of course,
Yeah.
was not
Two
was
years.
was not how it went. And yeah, and so that happened, and then we just took a pause, continued releasing the music because we're like, this is the time that people need something new to listen to.
Hmm.
And so released it. And honestly, that was a really, I like the pandemic, like, I was living in a van at the time, and so I was quarantined in a 100 square foot space. And
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, and so getting to release the music was like the little bits of joy of all
You
of
were
it.
living in the van?
I was living in the van. Yeah, I was living in the van in someone's backyard. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and so I would, be in there. Luckily, the people in the house had a dog, and so the dog would come in the backyard and play. Play with the dog, and it's so funny. The dog would always come out there and play, and it was just like kind of my best friend at the time,
Right.
because I was in school, and so a lot of people early 20s didn't initially take anything seriously.
All
Um,
right.
and
Sure.
so
They're like, whatever, I'm gonna go out anyway.
yeah, Trader Joe's, let's touch every item, and
Right.
I have an autoimmune, and so I was
Oh
very
my
strict.
gosh. Oh
And
yeah, I would be
I
too. Wow.
in a van, and so I took the TV from inside the house. I asked them, I said, "Hey, you guys have an extra TV? Can I take it?" And they're like, "Yeah." So I set it up in the backyard because in Reading, once March hits, it's not gonna rain until probably October.
Okay.
Maybe sprinkles here and there. And so I set a TV up outside with my PlayStation. I just played NBA 2K all day
Oh,
for
that's
like,
awesome.
but yeah, that was kind of and then the music was releasing and it started gaining steam just because I feel like people needed something to hold on to a little bit or a new thing to get excited about. And
Hmm.
so a big part of the band's initial gust of momentum, I
Hmm.
think just came from people being bored out of their minds.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that album did really well. I mean, there's a lot of songs on there that have millions of streams.
Yeah, it did do really well and it was surprising. I mean, I've I've said since the beginning, I think we always had really small dreams.
Hmm.
Uh, our first release, I was like, I just want the streams to show up on Spotify, which means
Right.
you break 1,000.
Break a
Uh,
thousand.
and so with this album, I was like, I would love to have 30,000 monthly listeners. And of course, you start releasing the singles, and there's the snowball effect of, you have 12,000 monthly listeners, and then by the time the next single comes out, you have 16, and you have 20. And so by the time an album released, we were around that point, and
Hmm.
it was like this feeling of like, oh, geez, like I really think we need to think bigger about this. And so, yeah, the album did really well, and I'm still super thankful for it. Um, and it's I think playing those songs has just now started to get a little old.
Oh,
And so,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, because we've only released an EP since,
Yeah,
but
because you put that out and then you put out one more EP, and was that EP was this year, wasn't it? Earlier this year?
yeah, so we re-released it this year when we signed to Capitol.
Okay.
So we had released that in August 2021, and it was a 4-song EP called If I'm Being Honest.
Hmm.
And we did one single off it called 50 milligrams. And 50 milligrams I'd actually written around the same time I was writing the Reading EP, but it was like completely contrasting thematically. And so I was like, I'm not gonna do this. It's a little too sad. It's a little too it was just about like the staunch tension I was in of being in a ministry Christian school while being on antidepressants, and
Hmm.
just just the weird collision of yeah, just the tension I was in. And
Yeah, for
so I
sure.
think once we had released Fraction Heart, I had another one of these realizations of I still think we need to push this further into what we actually want to say. And so
Okay.
if I'm being honest was the beginning of that. And so
Okay.
if I'm being honest, we that song, I mean, the EP has done great. I think our top song right now is still from that EP.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it is. And was that like what drew in Capitol Records? Was it hearing one of those songs on there, or
well, so we actually, the guy who mixed and co-produced our Fraction Heart record was really good friends with an A&R there named Garrett Davis, and
okay?
so Garrett was listening to it and he loved it, but this is back 2020, and he thought we had already signed with a different label because we were kind of in talks with a different label, and so
Oh.
he didn't talk to us. He was like, because he was friends with the other A&R, he's like, I'm just gonna kind of let this run its course. Bummer we didn't get him.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think it was probably the summer or maybe April of 2021. Um, Garrett saw us at like a bar in Franklin,
In
and he was like,
Tennessee?
"Yeah, at OB
Oh,
Joyful."
oh
Uh,
wow. Okay.
yeah, yeah, and so because we were there meeting with a different label, and he was asking, he's like, "Hey, how's it going with that label that you signed with?" And I was like, "Well, we didn't actually sign with them." He's like, "Are you kidding? Like, I thought you guys were with them." And no, no, we're not. And so he was like, "Hey, we need to meet. Let's set something up." And so we were already there meeting with a different label, and
Oh wow.
Capitol sets up this whole thing for us to come hang out with them. And
And
so
yeah, because they're here in Tennessee too.
yeah,
Where you're at least the branch you guys are signed to, I believe, right?
yeah, they're in Brentwood.
Brentwood, right?
And
Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so all the band guys were in town except for our drummer. and we went to East Iris and met with the whole Capitol team. And they were like, "Hey, can we hear your upcoming EP?" And that's when I kind of got nervous because I'm like, "Well, this is a lot different from our last album." And I'm half thinking like they're gonna hear it and be like, "Cool, well, hey, great to see you guys."
Right. Yeah.
And we showed it to them and they loved it. And the funny thing is like the song that was the most general market on the whole thing, they were like, "That's our favorite one." I'm like, "Oh, that's great to hear." One thing I
Okay.
really liked, I think they were the only label that really asked questions to the band guys. And they're like, "Hey, so Adam, was your thought process with this? And Cam, what was your thought process with this?" And I
Uh-huh.
was like, "Oh, I love that." Because in the past there were like a couple that were like, "You should just go solo." And I'm like,
Oh,
"No,
yeah. So that's cool that they're like, yeah, like really
yeah,
actively engaging with everybody and curious. Like they sound like they're actually music fans instead of just,
yeah."
okay, let's figure out the
That's
best way to make money off of this.
Yeah, that was nice because like they were I think one of the first ones that wasn't like, "So what about radio?" Because like,
Sure.
we always lived in that tension, especially with our first EP being fairly contemporary Christian, of like, we're like, we
Hmm.
don't really resonate with, like, we won't fit unless we change something.
Oh,
And
because they were trying to push you onto K-Love and all those stations, I would
yeah,
imagine.
yeah, like, a lot of places were like, well, how about we make some sonic shifts um to be able to fit? And we were just like, I don't think so. Like that's never really been what I wanted.
Hmm.
And I kind of always held on to that. Hey, if I wouldn't want to listen to it, I don't want to make it. Um, and so that was kind of our line in the sand. And so it was really
Sure.
nice. It was really nice when they were like just stoked on like, "You need to get into some clubs and play these songs and just have a bunch of sweaty people around." I'm like, "You're right. Thank you. Thank you so much." And
And was this with the songs on the album that's coming out, the new one?
oh no, this was with If I'm Being Honest even.
Oh, it was. Okay, so this is still
Yeah,
even that time. Okay, gotcha.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, you're good. You're good. This is April 2021. And so
Okay.
it was a long like courting process with them.
Sure.
Very homeschool terminology. But but so we talked to them for a long time, and I think after we signed, they said it was the most contract revisions they've ever had.
Oh,
Uh,
that's probably a good thing, right? Then you knew
yeah,
what
it
you
was awesome.
wanted, right?
Yeah,
And they were
it was
willing to
great.
bend. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I think they were just kind of stoked that we were a band and we wanted to handle the merch and we wanted to handle the social media because so many people like, on the thing was like, we'll handle the social media, we'll handle the merch. And we're like, "Oh, no, no, we actually really like doing that and we like having control over that." And I think they loved it. And
Oh, yeah, I
so,
was gonna say you're probably one of the few bands that says that. Because if I
yeah,
was in a band, I'd be like, "Oh, you take that over, thank you."
yeah, you guys handle all
That's
the
all
stuff.
you.
Give me 5% of it.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
but yeah, and so we eventually signed in it was February 27th of 2022. And I know that because we had been trying to find a time for everyone to get together to read over the contract and sign it. And we
Mhm.
just couldn't because I was getting married on the 26th. And
Oh, wow, what a big day. So the 26th,
yeah,
you get married, 27th, you sign a record deal.
yeah, so we got married the 26th and we got married in Sacramento, me and my wife Adita, and we had to fly out of Reading the next day. And so we're driving in. She's like, "Hey, I have an idea." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "We should get all the guys together and we should sign the deal." And I'm like, "Are you serious? Like, are you sure? Like, we just got married yesterday." Like, because I was stoked on that idea. And so we
Right,
text all the guys. We have Dom text all the guys. Dom's our manager. And he's like, "Hey,
okay.
come over. I know, there's been some changes to the contract. I just want to read it over with everybody." Doesn't say anything about signing. And me and Adita come storming through the doors and they're like, "Yes." I'm like,
Uh,
"Let's sign."
oh,
You
that's
know,
cool. Yeah,
Capital Campaign and stuff like that. And it was a really fun.
amazing.
And so from there,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, and we had a whole record to write after that. And so they had the idea of re-releasing If I'm Being Honest. So that's why it,
Came
says
out
it really,
2022. Got you. And then
yeah,
when do you start writing this? I mean, that wasn't that long ago, right? I mean, actually, but you had released it beforehand, right? So then
yeah,
you put it out in February. Or no, you
yeah,
signed the deal in February.
yeah.
So
I
then
think
it
we put it
comes.
in May.
Okay, yeah. So it comes out, and then how quickly are you starting on this next album that's coming out?
I mean, I feel like I had been writing it since we finished If I'm Being Honest.
Okay.
I just had a goal this time because I feel like every record we've done, I had written just enough songs.
Okay.
Um, just enough songs, and even not enough, and finishing the last song the day of recording. Um, and so, this time I really wanted it to be different because I wanted
Mhm.
it to be like these songs are on the record because they're the best songs we've got, not
Mhm.
like they're on the record because they're all the songs we've got. And so I think at the end it ended up being like 32 songs we were choosing from for an 11
Wow.
record. And it was really cool because I kind of based that, like we were talking about the Foremans. I think for their second record, John had like 108 demos.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
he writes so many songs, it's
yeah,
insane.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was great. So we had the 32 songs and whittled it down, and then you sit down around in a circle with the band, and you guys kind of duke it out and choose which ones finally make it.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I mean, I had started writing that one. I feel like right after, if I'm being honest, and I had a really hard time deciding what I wanted to write about.
Mhm.
Um, just because I was like, I'm very much out of the ministry school headspace, and I'm
Mhm.
very much not wanting us to be a Christian contemporary act. Um, and so, but I still have bits and pieces of things I want to say, you
Mhm.
know, uh, in a similar vein. And so, like, what do I write songs about? And so, eh, you know, I felt like I kind of finally started processing the crazy year, or the
Mhm.
crazy 3 years at this point, of, you know, going through a global pandemic, um, you know, getting married, um, really, I mean, living in a van, moving out of a van, graduating school on Zoom, all this,
That's so bizarre.
yeah, just all this stuff that I never really had to think through,
Mhm.
because I could just write songs about religious things before.
Right,
And
right.
that's enough, and I never have to think about my own heart, and the things that I'm thinking and the things that I wanna talk about. And a lot of times, I mean, even on the early records, it's like, well, it's not a great melody, and we haven't really locked down a turn, but, it's spiritual, and so it will sell, kinda thing.
Right,
Like,
right,
as
right.
a little subconscious kinda thing, 'cause, I feel like we always had decent intentions wherever we were. And,
Mhm.
so, I mean, just with the upcoming record, it was really fun, and at times really painful to write the record about just kind of the last few years and how
Yeah,
much
and you're writing
everything.
it directly about yourself in your life instead of like,
Yeah,
yeah, like you said, like more in the spiritual realm.
yeah, and you feel naked, like, writing it. Um,
Right.
you're like, "This is just me," and, that's when you start getting the texts of, "Hey, are you doing okay?" Um, After releasing the song and stuff like that. And so, I think the first song we wrote on the whole thing was the first single, Brother Jack, or it was one of the
Okay.
first ones. And, I was just like, I definitely wanna say something about, this letter I wrote my brother of, the
Mhm.
keep your head straight, hopes up, heart right, everything will turn out in your favor. And, so that was kind of like the start of all of it. And that, it went from very, 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 very hopeful to like pain to hopeful
Mhm.
to like, I'm terrified of just growing old and stuff like
Sure.
that. And so, yeah, it was a really special process, and one that I don't really, and feel like reliving right now, because it was, a year and a half of writing a record and hearing none of it recorded. And so
Mhm.
it was the most patient I've ever had to be.
Okay. Wow. Were you like aside from being that vulnerable and putting out the songs, and then yeah, getting texts like, "Are you all right, man?" Like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
different. But like even aside from that, like you just signed a deal with a major label. Was that
yeah,
even another piece of it? Like, oh, and now I have to do I have to prove myself to this major label? Like,
totally.
I don't want to screw this up. Like, were you having those thoughts as well?
Oh man, all the time. Like after like every trip to Nashville, that they would pay for, of like to write. And I would have these songs. There was one time I walked away and I didn't think I had any good ones from that
Mhm.
trip. And I'm like, oh, it was just this constant thought in my head of how long is it going to be until they realize I'm not who they thought I was. And
Oh yeah, like that imposter syndrome.
yeah, a ton of imposter syndrome, because like because of my dad and my mom, they always really instilled a lot of identity in me, to where I know who I am and I know what I'm capable of, but am I Capitol Records capable? And
Mhm.
And so it was a big imposter syndrome of like I'd have the record, I'd have 10 songs. I'm like, this could be an album. And I would just then get this thought in my head of like, what happens when they hear it and they're like, oh, this really wasn't what we were thinking.
Mhm.
Like, do I still do it?
Right, yeah,
And
because you can when you're at that level, you could turn an album in and they could be like, yeah, we don't really like any of this, right? And
yeah,
then they'll
yeah,
make you redo it.
yeah. I mean, the nicest thing of all of it was every song that we turned in, they were like, oh my God. Um,
Okay, that's good.
and
That's a good sign.
yeah, and it was like this really great thing because I think with our team primarily dealing with Christian music, I think they were all just really excited to have a band that was taking risks musically and lyrically and all this stuff of, just being like, I think they were all just excited to have music that they were going to listen to.
Mhm.
And so, we'd show it and they'd be like, this is, they would all just get excited. They'd send it around. We'd get texts from people who weren't even on our team. And
That's cool.
it was a really good feeling. And
And
so when it all was done.
and then how do you get obviously you have some big features on the record in Judah, June the
Yeah,
Lion, in Jon Foreman, as we talked earlier, and Tim Foreman. Like, how did those relationships start? Were those people that you knew, or were they like kind of orchestrated
yeah,
through the record label, or like how did you, like Jon Foreman, for example, like how did you get to know him and then be able to
yeah,
record in Encinitas with them,
yeah.
or
I mean, so
Carlsbad, which is pretty much
yeah,
the same thing.
exactly. When we were getting ready to sign with Capitol, we weren't even signed yet. I don't think.
Okay.
Uh, were we? No, we weren't even signed yet. And they said, "Hey, what's gonna what's gonna kind of prove what we're capable of, like what's gonna kind of seal the deal for you, and like who do you want to work with?" Because they had been offering me rights with a lot of people, and I think I'd already written with Judah at that point because
Okay.
I had just met him through mutual friends because he was just he's in Nashville, and
Hmm.
so every time I'd go to Nashville, I'd be like, hey, I'd ask a buddy like, hey, you mind connecting me with Judah? And so eventually, we got lunch and then we wrote and stuff like that. But with Capitol, they were like, hey, what's gonna really? So I was like, I really want to work with Jon Foreman. Because I mean, he's always been, in a way, like my hero with music. Like
Yeah.
talked about, Copeland and Switchfoot was my first concert ever. Um, I have a great photo from like 2 years or 3 years ago, probably, of like me front and center, like shaking hands with John while he's on the
Oh,
stage.
that's cool. Like from the stage. Yeah. Cause he always
Yeah,
comes down into the crowd and stuff.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
And so like it's funny. Like they're like, okay, we can do that. And then they're like, okay, you're going in, 2 weeks. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to have ideas. And so they add me to a group chat with John and Tim. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. And so what I kept doing, this is hilarious, is I kept sending voice messages because I was like, if I can just get them to send a voice message back and I
I
hear them
will
say,
save this.
yeah, or not even that, just like if I can hear them saying my name with his Jon Foreman voice, I will, like, the starstruckness I think will fade away. Like
Right.
I think I'll be cool, calm, and collected when we get in person. And it
Or you're
never
like, I know this is real, right? At that
yeah, yeah.
point.
And then when we get to their studio in Carlsbad, I still hadn't gotten the voice message. And so we got there, I just took a big breath, when I met him, and I'm like, hey, gonna get this out of the way. This is really cool. This is cool for me. And and then we had an absolute blast of a time. Ended
That's
up
so
going back
cool.
out there a couple months later with the whole band to track all the songs, and super fun.
Wow. So did you track the whole record there with him?
No, no, so we did.
Oh,
So yeah, we did. We wrote 4 songs together, and we
okay.
tracked 3. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
we tracked 3, and 2 of them are on the record. One of
And
them were
he features on one of them or both of them?
yeah, no, he features on a song called "How It Sets You Free." It's funny
Yeah.
because uh, do you watch Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah, I have seen that show. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
I
a
watched the whole thing once, like for 1 and 2 seasons, and then
yeah,
I haven't seen it so long. But
same. There's just a scene in it where he's talking to his counselor, who's the team counselor, Dr. Sharon, and
yeah, yeah.
she's like, he says, "Well, maybe I don't want to know the truth," and she goes, "The truth will set you free, but it'll piss you off first." And
Okay.
and so I took a screen recording of that and I sent it to John and Tim in the group chat. I was like, "Let's write this song," and so that song is basically the truth sets you free after it pisses you off.
I like
And
that.
yeah, and so we finished recording it. I had tracked both verses, or I think it's 3 verses, and I kept mentioning to John, I was like, I would love for you to sing on this song. I know that there's some legal hoops to jump through, and if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But shoot or shoot, and I'm gonna shoot my shot.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Exactly.
and so eventually, we get a demo back with John singing on, and I lose my mind a little
Oh
bit.
man, that's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, and he's the only feature on the record. So it's
Oh,
pretty
the other
cool.
one, the other guys just wrote with you,
Yeah,
like
so Judah,
Caleb
yeah,
of Colony House, and then Judah from Judah and Lion.
yeah. So Judah co-wrote I Don't Want to Live Like This,
Hmm.
and then Caleb um co-wrote Tough Love with me. And Caleb and I, we've written another song together, and I'm sure we're gonna write more. And so we had the thought of, do we have Caleb feature on this? And there's just the thought of like, you really can only have a feature once. Like
Hmm.
like one person can really only feature one time. And I was like, I think that we should wait off until there's a different one.
Save him. Save him for the next record.
But no, they're all awesome, and Judah's awesome, Caleb's awesome, John's awesome, and it was just like a really cool. I mean, Tim is incredible too, and it was just like this really fun thing of meeting a bunch of people I've looked up to for a long time, and all of them were everything and more that I hoped they'd be. And
That's so
so
cool.
that's just, I think, the great thing of that pseudo alternative rock sphere is like it seems like everyone is really down to earth.
Right. Like when they say don't meet your heroes, and then but you do, and then you're like, this guy's really rad. Like, I'm
Yeah,
so
and I'm
glad
like,
I
highly recommend reading your heroes.
right. That's awesome. And you have a tour coming up next. Well, oh my gosh, it's already November this month.
Yeah, we
And
do. Yeah,
you're playing Nashville here on the 17th, I think. You're playing the
17th
end.
at the end. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to come to that show for sure.
you'll have to come through. Yeah, I'll text Dom and get something set aside for you, 'cause I think there's like 10 tickets left or something like
Oh
that.
wow. You guys are
Yeah,
going quick there.
yeah. No,
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
thanks.
I'd rather hear
That's
that than, yeah, man, we got plenty of space.
I know. Urbana, Illinois, and Knoxville, Tennessee, we do. And, but Atlanta and Cincinnati's already sold out. It's my first time playing in my hometown with the band.
Wow. And it's a sold out show. That's so cool, man.
Sold out show
Congratulations.
in Cincinnati, Kentucky, because it's in the Kentucky venue.
Oh, cool.
And then yeah, and then Nashville. We wanted to do a really tiny venue, and so I think the end is like typically metal shows, right?
I don't know. Like, there's all kind of walks of bands that come through there. I'm trying to
Yeah.
think. Like, I always get that one confused with the basement, like, because there's 2 basements, the basement, the basement east, and then the end. But yeah, I don't know what the capacity is. Maybe a few hundred. I can't remember.
200. I think Tyson Matzenbacher just played there like a month ago too.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
yeah, he's cool. I've had him on my show too.
he's a funny dude.
Yeah.
Another San Diego guy.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even. That's what was crazy. I'm like, you're from San Diego, and he's like, yeah, and I'm like, what? Like, I've never even heard it. Like, because I was on the radio in San Diego for a lot of years. So like,
Yeah.
and we did a local show. So I'm like, when? But then like our paths never crossed. But like, he knew like guys that I knew that were booking venues there, and yeah, it was just wild. Like to hear, oh yeah, I know him. So yeah, it was cool to chat with him.
We just played in San Diego. Is Som a venue?
Soma. You played Soma?
We played Soma with John Mark McMillan last month.
Did you play the big room or the side stage?
We played side stage.
Okay, which is still a big room. I mean, you hear big room is like 2,000 or 3,000, I think. It's massive. And then even the side stage is like 1,000 or close to 1,000, I think.
Yeah. I heard, and I don't know if this is true, you can kind of confirm it, but because there's no ventilation there, it's like famous for people leaving before the end of shows because it's just so hot in there.
Yeah, it used to be a movie theater that they gutted the whole movie theater. Yeah. So and that's why there's that one slant that goes into the main or the side stage, and then the rest was just like flattened out. So like there's like it's like that's why like I'm sure you had like did you have like the upstairs area? Like, did they give you a little dressing room? That was all like where they used to have the projectors that like shut out to the
that room is making so much more sense now.
Yeah. So that was,
it
it was an old movie theater that gutted. Someone's had like 4 variations of it.
so cool. I
So
loved
that's
it.
where
That
like
was
Blink started there, but not at that one, right? Like,
no way.
yeah. So like a lot of those early San Diego bands started at Soma, but it had like 4. It was moved around so many times,
Yeah,
and this might be the case still. But the old Blink drummer Scott Rayner, who played on the first 2 albums, he like basically helped this new one, the one that you played. Like he funded a lot of it until like
that's awesome.
so they could because like the people that ran Soma, like they needed funding or something, so he funded it until they were like get him like pay him back basically to like he gave him the loan to like start it again, which is crazy.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I loved that venue, and I love San Diego as a whole.
That's
And
cool, man. Yeah, that's
I'm-
you played a solid venue to go
yeah,
through there.
I've
That's
heard it's
awesome.
pretty legendary, and so
Oh yeah, so
I'm
many.
excited to go back.
Cool, man. Well, yeah. Well, I'm gonna check you out in Nashville. So that's the 17th,
Yes.
and yeah, all your tour dates are you're doing a little run of like mainly here in East or South, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Cincinnati, Knoxville,
yeah, Atlanta.
Illinois, Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, 5 shows, 5 days, ending in Nashville, the longest sets we've done. And
Wow.
I really, got myself in the foot with, this new album of how high the songs are, like, vocally. And so I'm interested to see how I can hold up 5 days in a row on 15 songs a night.
There
And
you
so,
go.
which I know is pretty weak compared to, 30-day tours, 3-year tours people do. But we'll see, man. It's gonna be a great time. And uh we got our buddies in this band called Judges that's from Cincinnati. They
Okay.
I've never thought, like, I've always thought that they didn't get the recognition they deserve.
Deserved.
And
Oh,
so
so you're
I
throwing
was
them
like,
on as opener?
oh yeah,
That's
first
cool.
opportunity I got, I'm like, we're bringing Judges.
That's
And so
cool.
it'll be a really fun night. I'm excited to meet you in person and
Yeah,
see.
for sure. I'm definitely gonna
Yeah,
come out. My wife and I'll come out for sure. So yeah, the 17th we'll meet IRL.
that's gonna be sweet. It's gonna be sweet.
Cool, man.
Yeah,
Thank you, Gable, for doing this, dude. This has been so much fun. I have one more question before I let you
yeah,
go.
yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. And I'm
Oh,
so,
this has been awesome, man. It's been awesome. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
geesh. Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say, um, I feel like what I'm constantly telling people is no one thinks about you as much as you think about you. So just do what you want to do. Do smart things. Focus on your social media, focus on all that. But when it comes to music, make the music you want to make. And then just in the words of our first song, I feel like is kind of becoming our mantra is you keep your head straight, your hopes up, and your heart right, and everything's bound to kind of work itself out eventually.
Bringing it backward.